Our project deals with reviving the urban village of Baishizhou. This is located in Shenzhen, a densely populated city close to Hong Kong in the southeastern part of China. Shenzhen is very well connected by a wide train network. It also has a vast highway and metro linkage. Shenzhen has 90% of migrant workers, but the gender gap is quite small, with women making up 49% of the population. Also, it is observed that a large portion of the population is middle to older age. This can be attributed to China's one child policy in the 1970s. It is also noted that most of the workforce is employed in the manufacturing, construction, and service sectors. We approach the design by creating a business model. Currently, the business models in Shenzhen are very linear. The government intends to change regulation and negotiates with the villagers to buy the land for redevelopment. The villagers in return get cash, urban hukou, and a place to live. This land is then given to a developer to create a new luxurious neighborhood. However, this leads to destruction of the urban village, and the new neighborhood only benefits the government and the developer. The villagers in the long run find it expensive to rent and difficult to find jobs, and eventually the migrants are kicked out of the village. We aim to create a circular business model which will provide services for the neighborhood to generate some money while enriching the community. When village owners will renegotiate a development plan with the government, in exchange for sale of land, the villagers will not only receive an urban passport but also will be part of a program that will implement a training program in the village. A bottom-up approach. This service aims to boost the local economic activities of the migrant already present today to guide them into bigger businesses, generating more qualified employees, and to ensure their insertion into the city scale. In return to this program, migrants will have to pay a percentage of their future benefits to the villagers and developers. This allows to preserve the identity of the village, rich in its dense and diversified economic activities. In parallel, the developers will upgrade the village to host these training centers and improve the quality of space. It is often observed that plans for redevelopment do not include minorities like elderly, women, etc. The business model aims to be inclusive and to achieve access to services, universal mobility, safety from violence, health and hygiene, resilience to climate fluctuations, and provision of safety centers. We take inspiration from the program of the World Bank. China has seen millions of rural workers migrating to cities, but these workers are relatively poorly educated, with majority lacking skills to make them viable options in city job markets. A program from the World Bank is helping them develop skills. The project focuses on three major challenges that rural migrants generally face in cities: skill development, employment services, and worker protection. The training center is part of a platform named Learning Together, attached to a government organization. It will be used to organize tutoring sessions to boost the local economy of the migrants, as well as academic learning to increase education levels such as driving license, foreign language classes, etc. Different activities can be taught, therefore a flexible space is created to host the different possibilities. Two prototypes of two different sizes are characterized by an elevated floor, a plinth. Several steps extend the interior space to the outside by creating sitting areas in dialogue with the exterior public space. Flexible furniture is integrated in the room, such as pull-out seating stored under the plinth with the capacity to accommodate up to 70 people. Furthermore, on the back wall of the room, a flexible storage unit is located, and this is called the Tetris wall. The wall is locked when the furniture is not in use, and it allows for a free usage of the room while training programs are not running. The Tetris wall is conceived in order to allow the most flexible configuration possible. Once closed, the furniture only measures 60 centimeters deep and 5 meters long. Through an app on the phone, the QR code can be scanned to unlock the space. Charges will be registered for each minute of use, and in this way, the responsibility of the furniture is ensured by the users. Maintenance can be done quickly through the app by the notification made by a user. The wall furniture is composed of three parts. In the center are located two cabinets, the water and technical one. They will provide hot and cold drinkable water, printer, projector, sockets, and other basic tools. On each side of these two cabinets are located the sliding furniture. These are composed of a cap that can be pulled out and moved in the room to be used as a space divider, as well as a storage space or projector surface. Inside are interlocked four tables of 1.5 meters and 0.9 meter high. Used together, they form a complex of sitting and working structures. Turned on the side, they can also be used as sitting areas. An easy closing system of the space is ensured by a metallic curtain similar to the commercial activities in the area. During the night, the space can be closed and locked, and during the day, it can welcome community activities in parallel to the training center.
Baishizhou urban village is one of the largest in Shenzhen. It's divided in 5 urban smaller villages. We have on the north the Xintang village, industrial zone, Upper Bashi village, Tangtu village, and on the south the Baishizhou urban village, which will be the focus of our analysis. It was important to understand the atmosphere and condition of the site, but also of what was developed around it, such as the city with its characteristic skyscraper, shopping center, as well as the touristic attraction Windows of the World. Furthermore, a more in-depth analysis was carried out through a mapping exercise in order to then develop a more efficient and successful proposal. Commercial activities were mapped out, such as food and restaurants, shops, service shops, office and beauty salons. From this map, it was visible that commercial activities are mainly distributed and located along the main street on the north, center and south, while the east, which is mainly residential, is empty and not so many commercial activities are present. Furthermore, public facilities were also identified, and those, at the contrary of the commercial activities, are not so present. There are only few scattered alongside the site, such as health center, one educational construction or service centers. The Baishizhou urban village is very highly dense constructed, hence the circulation network was important to identify, both the primary and secondary network. Furthermore, entrances to the village were mapped on the north and south, as well as on the west. On the east, instead, it's closed, as it separates the urban village from the touristic attraction Windows of the World. Furthermore, the main intersection of the site were mapped out, and this was fundamental to understand the focal point of the urban village of Baishizhou. The public spaces were also mapped, open public spaces around the site and pocket spaces in between the constructions. Furthermore, a space syntax analysis were developed. With connectivity, you have the main street at the center and few perpendicular ones and the ones along the Baishizhou urban village. Instead, for the integration, you can see that the streets that were well connected, they are not so integrated, but only the bottom part. There are few streets which are well connected, and some are instead which are left out and not connected at all, such as the north or the southeast part. The project aims at emulating the concept from the vernacular Chinese architecture, especially the courtyard house, which creates a safe and harmonious environment independent from the exterior. Three are the main concepts from the vernacular Chinese architecture that inspire the spatial configuration of the proposal. Starting with the climate, where the elements are located in order to protect the inhabitants from the sun exposure, protection from the north wind, creating natural ventilation, but also providing a barrier from dust and noise pollution. Hence, those are the elements that characterize the concept of climate. Then, following the second perspective is the architectural translation of Confucianism, where the symmetry and main axis assume a very important aspect. The entrance is located in opposition to the main building and is provided with a screen wall to protect the views from outside towards the main private courtyard. The hierarchy is highlighted by the position of the building as well as their volumes. That's the second point of Confucianism. Third and last perspective is the influence of the Taoism philosophy, that it reflects the attention brought of the harmony between man and nature. Here, the buildings are positioned in a square shape and are oriented towards the main central courtyard, the Kuai, around which is built the man-made environment. Steps create a threshold and therefore an harmonious dialogue between the inside and outside spaces. Following our interventions, acts on 4 different scales, starting from the master plan and how the urban village is planned. Then we zoom in into the public street level, redeveloping street typology and ground level public spaces such as courtyard, to then zoom in into the built environment of the building blocks and residential units. And then the last scale is the roof level, where we create a water catching strategy and bamboo structure to elevate the dimension of public spaces.
Explaining our master plan, here we highlighted the most important elements from our conclusion of the site analysis. So we can see on this map the commercial streets, the intersections, and also the entrances. And then in dark blue, the public spaces, which are the bucket spaces that we identified already existing in the village. And then afterwards, we highlighted the different areas from our space syntax analysis, which were less integrated, and we called them the different neighborhoods that we wanted to incorporate in our design. So the overall strategy for our master plan is to preserve the identity and characteristic of the site for its richness and diversity, and also to upgrade it and bring a better life quality. So for that, we wanted to highlight and preserve the commercial street as it's functioning very well today, and to extend it to the perpendicular streets, which we saw in the space syntax that was also well integrated. Then we wanted to work on the entrances and the main intersections, and then around it, we will apply our courtyard typologies. So we will have 2. The first one in dark blue are the central courtyards, and then in light blue are the residential courtyards. This gives us 4 typologies of public spaces. We are going to explain them now following one by one. So the first one are the entrances and the intersections typology. The second one is the inner commercial streets. The third one are the central neighborhood courtyards. And then the fourth one are the residential courtyards. So we want to keep and preserve and renovate the buildings around the commercial streets. And then in gray, we can see around our courtyard typologies, we want to propose a prototype where we can demolish the building inside the courtyard in order to regain a balance between built and unbuilt in the village. And then around the courtyards, we can increase the density with the new prototype that we're going to present later in the presentation. So we then reflected on the different heights of the building for the master plan, and for that we looked into the vernacular architecture of the courtyard typologies. So we wanted to work with towards the south lower building, which were originally related to the entrances and to the servants' quarter. Then the building will rise up towards the west, where the sons used to live, and then towards the east, the building becomes bigger in its importance and height, where the heir lived. And then finally, it rises up to the north, where the owner of the family courtyard used to live. So in that way, we wanted to preserve the connection to the past, and also to bring dynamism in the different heights of the village, of the buildings, and then also for our climate strategy. The typology that we're going to explain are the entrances and the intersections. So when we zoom into one, we first analyze the existing situation with the facades and the different proportion of the commercial activities, how they occupy the spaces, and how do they appropriate the external spaces. For that, we looked at then at the streets and the plans with the different pavements that were originally existing and how they were occupied. We can see that we wanted to work with a link to the past with the vernacular architecture for the sense of hierarchy by working with materiality to differentiate the different levels of openness from the inner streets towards the shops. We can see that the shops can extend onto the street until a certain point, which is characterized by a certain material and the height. And then the rest of the street is divided into different materialities, but the overall height stays the same in order for the streets to be used and reconverted in special occasions, for instance festivals or traditional moments, and the most important parts of the area, so the intersection nodes and also the entrances. So here we can see a glimpse of the atmospherical view of the streets. The second public space typology are the inner commercial streets. So we also analyzed the existing situation in the built fabric, where we looked at the different proportion of the commercial activities and how they extended and used the public spaces of the streets. we noticed that the public spaces are more used, and also the different presence of the steps are used as seating areas, gathering, and hierarchy in the street. So we wanted to increase them by only applying a more fluid line inside the street, and then also to work with different materialities to emphasize them. So we would have the first platform of the shop that can extend towards a certain point, then different steps, and then the central elements, which is wide enough to welcome cars, little trucks, and also the different bike carriers. So here is a glimpse again of the atmospherical view of the inner commercial streets. So we are now going to present the spatial typology of the residential courtyard. We wanted to work, for instance, with a typology of 9 buildings, and then to remove the central one in order to bring vegetation and greenery inside the courtyard. So here is the ground floor of the courtyard typology, symmetry and the axial of the organization of the plan, but also for the entrances, the presence of the screen wall. So the entrance is marked by covered space, which is in relation to the main street, and then it's protected by the screen wall, which is only 1.50 meters high, in order to protect the interior from the view, but also to allow someone passing to have a glimpse above it and to catch a little intrigue of the atmosphere inside the courtyard. In the opposite side of the entrance, we would have the entrance to the core to access then the different apartments on the upper level that we're going to explain in the following chapter. So the courtyard itself is lowered from the main street. So to enter, we have to enter this gentle slope that brings us toward the central point of the courtyard. This also allows the rainwater to flow towards the central area where the greenery is located. So here is a view of the entrance of the courtyard. Then around the courtyard we will have the communal spaces, which is characterized by steps, the plinth, and then the Tetris wall, as we explained earlier from our business plan typology, which can host different activities. So here we can see a view from inside these communal spaces, where we can see the close relation to the greenery and the outside space, while being covered and protected inside this more intimate area. Then we're going to look into the central courtyard typology. So each area that we marked as less integrated in the village will receive this bigger, large-scale courtyard in order to receive more dynamic activities. So the inner buildings are going to be replaced by a large greenery area, and on its both sides a paved area that can welcome different dynamic activities such as dance, sport, tai chi, or social gathering. The plan is based on an axial symmetrical level, so the entrances are marked on both sides in south and north by first plinth, which can host some, for instance, street foods or commercial activities, and then on the other side, commercial spaces. On the opposite side of the entrances are located the cores to access the upper apartments on the upper levels. The overall floor level of the ground floor is on the same height as the streets around it to emphasize its welcomeness and accessibility. A slightly slope is located in the 2 paved areas around the greenery to collect the water and to emphasize the collectiveness and the centrality of these 2 areas. Here we can see a view from the main street looking into the entrance. And located around the central neighborhood courtyard typology, we would have our training centers on both sides with different sizes room for different usages. Then we can see here a view from inside the courtyards where we can see the relationship with the different spaces around them.
Housing prototype. When looking at the plan of urban village subdivision of some areas dictated by a different grid is visible. The only red area appears more organically and do not follow a strict grid. The grid became a base for the design proposal with aim to preserve a village character. Buildings are connected into blocks around the courtyard. The connection is made by external corridors enabling circulation. Where required, secondary corridors can be added. The prefabricated cone structure allows for variable floor planning, except of clearly defined communication cores. Block principle allows for several transformation strategies. Firstly, the ground floor serves for commercial and communal purposes. Second, buildings' modular integration is ensured by external corridors. Further, the green network returns to the neighborhood. Greenery is an important element of roofs and the facade revitalization too. Based on the master plan, the blocks form a courtyards of various significance and different types of privacy. Great emphasis was placed on the rethinking of housing units, thanks to the perception of urgency for improving current living condition. Ground floor allows mainly accommodate a vocational training center and local businesses. Typical floor allows variable place different types of apartment units. Based on need, it is possible to subjectively place additional community spaces. With aim to accommodate families and co-housing groups of varying sizes and needs, 3 basic units were examined. Firstly, a family apartment with a fundamental model of 3 to 10 meters was examined to accommodate a family of 4. Another examined type is a tiny apartment, with the very minimal area of 13 square meters. This type of unit is designed for 1 or maximum of 2 people. The third type of designed apartment is a shared unit. This type has an area of 58 square meters. With smart design, it is possible to comfortably accommodate up to 8 people. Empathy was made on privacy while sharing a facility with strangers. Longitudinal orientation brings not only enough light but serves as a natural ventilation system. All units are designed as duplex apartments ergonomically in a minimal but efficient way. The typical floor layout is formed by a connection of 9 neighboring buildings by external corridors, which allows us to eliminate communication cores inside the building and provide more living space. Within each block, several flats can be omitted, and this free space will serve for community purposes. From the section, use of modularity is obvious. Repetition allows for a better quality of living with lower prices. Except for renovation of inner spaces, the facade treatment was designed to raise the village environment. Green facade elements have the power to increase the living conditions of local inhabitants by improving on air quality, thermal comfort, or noise absorption. Types of facade are used based on the street character the facade is facing or an interior program. By following natural principles and modern technologies, 4 different types of facades were designed to improve indoor and outdoor microclimate. The first type, the light steel structure corridor, serves as a communication but also as an extension of the units. The second type are green balconies, serving itself as a pot for the facade greenery. The third type is water-catching fabric used as a shading system. Finally, facades without windows allows for planting wild intensive greenery.
Water-catching roofscapes. The design of rooftops takes into account the meteorological conditions. Shenzhen is characterized by a hot and humid climate. The project tries to activate the underused space at the rooftops in the densely populated city. First of all, by capturing the water and guiding it to a collector so it can be reused for various purposes. This will be done with a system of 2 textiles. The textile on top can harvest fog. The permeable mesh allows the humid warm air to pass and will capture the water droplets. They will fall down by gravity and are catched by the canopy. The canopy is an impermeable textile that is working as a dew condenser and will capture most of the rainwater. The textile is very dense and is able to provide a pleasant shaded area. Both of the textiles could be made out of recycled plastic, a large waste material in Shenzhen, and can participate in our community ID. Shenzhen also has some serious challenges coming regarding water, due to rapid urbanization, heavy rainfall, and major hardening of the substrate. China started to implement the sponge city concept. This concept is based on the idea to soak up as much rainwater as possible, so the water is able to infiltrate in the ground and can become part again in the water cycle. Now the city is already struggling with floods, stormwater pollution, and drinking water shortage. The problems will rise in the near future in case Shenzhen doesn't take action. To contrary to the battle that Shenzhen has, we focused on this topic in our design. The textile on top captures the water. This is guided by the water pipe in between the bamboo poles and the water collector. The water flows down due to gravity to the greenery along the facade. The water that is left can be used to irrigate the courtyard. After this process, the water infiltrates again in the subsoil and can contribute again in the water cycle by evaporation. By activating this natural cycle and providing natural ventilation, we can create a more livable environment for the inhabitants. We can also make an estimation of how big the collector needs to be for the water, and this will be the area of the roof uplifted by 1 meter. To make the area on the roof more agradable to stay in summer, we can add a fogging system to cool down the place. The structure of the roofscape is made out of bamboo poles. Bamboo has a long history in Chinese culture. It is a natural, sustainable material that is cheap to use. The roofs will contain different structures. Each structure defines a specific occupation. This one is for leisure, for playground or relaxing area. This one is for sports, to do yoga, dance, volleyball, or basketball. This one is to gather, made with the flexible furniture also used in our community idea. To do theater, to give classes, or to play board games. The poles are connected with knotting, different kinds of knotting and lashing. Also, to connect the textile with the bamboo poles, we can use a rope. Here we use a bowline knot. For the foundation of the poles, the rainwater pole is embedded in the concrete, and the bamboo poles are connected with bolts, so they can be easily repaired. This one is a part that is made with a 3D printer, so it can connect the textile with the water pipe and not losing too much water. And this is the last image where all the details come together, where you see the foundation and also the textile and the knotting.
We conclude by reinstating the intention behind the project to achieve a circularity and balance between the different actors involved. The approach has been manifold, economically, socially, spatially, and climatic. We tackle the various scales differently to achieve a diverse range of impact. Thank you for listening.